Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. It is 6:32 on December 13th, 2021. We are meeting by Zoom. This is the Concord Select Board. We need a roll call vote.
Sure. Ms. Ackerman?
Aye, here present.
Ms. Bates?
Present.
Mr. Dane?
Present.
Ms. Escobedo? I do not see her. And myself, Mr. Johnson, are present.
Okay. We will proceed to the consent agenda.
So move to approve the consent agenda, which this week includes the town accountant warrants of December 9th, 2021, and the gift acceptances from the Friends of the Concord Carlisle Fields in the amount of $50,000, and from the Concord Carlisle Community Chest in the amount of $17,696.50 to the Council on Aging gift accounts.
Second.
All right, roll call vote.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Mr. Dane?
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo, I still do not see. And myself, Mr. Johnson, aye. And thanks to the Friends of Concord Carlisle Fields and the Concord Carlisle Community Chest for those gifts.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, our next item, discussing the interim town manager. I would like to have all the board members present if possible. So I'm going to suggest that we go on to the liaison reports while we're waiting for Linda. And Chris, if that's you from the town manager's office, could you try and contact Linda?
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, let's do the liaison reports. Susan, are you going to go first as usual, or does someone else?
Sure, I will go first.
All right.
On the 29th of November, the Personnel Study Task Force met and had a discussion about the charge and about the inclusion of personnel policies in the charge for them to change, which, as we know, brought up the discussion of that we had a select board last week, and I'll follow up on that at the end of my report. The personnel board met on November 30th, and they completed a number of typical actions. They also voted a 2% salary increase for non-union employees who had not already reached the top of their range. And this was in order to put in place something that had been not implemented during COVID because of the tight budget. So it was sort of a makeup. White Pond Advisory Committee met on December 1st, and they had a number of interesting discussions. There was someone from let me see. Someone supposed to be there from Marston Mills, but they weren't. But there was someone there from Stiles Pond in Oxford. So they talked about commonalities and what they were wanting to do to help clean up the water in their respective areas. They talked about the CPA application and presentation to the CPC committee, and their social media presence. Economic Vitality Committee met on December 3rd, and it was a good meeting, very engaging. Surveys have gone out to the business community, and they decided that going forward, EVC members will connect with other organizations in the business community that they're already associated with, like Chamber of Commerce, Concord Business Partnership, et cetera, to sort of collect information amongst all of these organizations. Beth gave a town update. The menorah lighting was extremely successful. There were 250 people there. It was a great community event. They mentioned that tomorrow, well, Tuesday the 14th, which is tomorrow, there's going to be a forum on the Thoreau Business District, possible zoning changes, and that there are a lot of interested neighbors. There was a big reaction from the business community about the town manager's resignation, and they all felt quite strongly that he had been an advocate for business that had not existed before in the town manager's office, and was especially helpful during COVID. And that's about it for that. The West Concord Junction Cultural Development Committee met on the 7th and discussed the allocation of a $7,500 grant that they are expecting from the MCC. And it's going to be divided between, there's a kiosk that they want to design and put in West Concord. They're going to re-edit and reprint their brochure. And there's also an allocation out of that for another mural, and they discussed the possible placement, and the subject matter will be Industrial Concord. It looks really interesting. And they had old photos of the bucket factory, the chair factory, Damon Mill, the reformatory. And so that's a great project. That'll be interesting to see how that comes about. Conservation Restriction Stewardship Committee met on the 7th, and it was a fairly standard meeting going over the conservation restrictions and people's reports and the status of them. They are going to need a new member. So I asked Chris, it's not on the agenda this week, but it will be next time. Commission on Disability met on the 9th, and they had a discussion with a follow-up about people going to the emergency room and not being able to find their way home because there was no kind of taxi service. There are people that waited a long time. So this is of concern not just to Concord, but to the adjoining communities. And some of the representatives from Acton and then also Jean will be involved too. They're going to reach out to the Emerson Ombudsman to see how they can address this. They discussed the White Pond and the accessibility and the fact that it's been through 2 town meetings. There have been permits issued, and that beach ADA part and the wastewater management pieces are in place and moving forward. And then the last meeting was at 4 o'clock today, and that was the Personnel Study Task Force agenda. And they discussed, the select board had asked them to weigh in on our suggested edits to the charge, and the committee voted 4-1 against that they wanted to just keep it as it is. And they discussed questions that they were going to ask different stakeholders, the town moderator, the town manager, personnel board, select board, human resources. And that's it. Thanks.
I had a question, which was on the Personnel Study Committee. I mean, it isn't typical for the committee to vote on the contents of their charge. I mean, we set the charge.
Right.
So I guess the question is, what is the effect of that vote?
Right. So I would, right after they took that vote, I was there and I said that I would like to invite them all to meet with us next Monday because it's on our agenda. And I think we need to have pretty much a joint meeting with them and we need to talk through all the issues. And the select board is the decision maker on this. But we need to listen to what they're saying and then we need to I think there's still a lot of confusion. They did not have the charge in writing. And anyway, I think that we will talk about it next Monday night with them.
Okay.
We gave them a job to do, and they have been frustrated, not because of the lack of clarity of the charge, but because the charge says that they had certain resources available to them, including the town manager, the personnel director, assistant town manager, et cetera, et cetera. And when they go to any of those people, they're not being given any information at all. And they do
Well,
not.
that's not totally correct. I think we should discuss this on Monday night. They have gotten some information, but not all of it. There's a lot of confusion. I'll give you a call about it, Henry, but I think on Monday, we're going to meet with them and hopefully come to a resolution on this.
Okay, I'll deal with my liaison reports. How about?
Go ahead.
So with the DEI Commission, they had their first meeting. And speaking of requesting information from the town, that was one of the key things that came out of it. They would like diversity data that the town has in terms of the diversity of its employees, the schools data, census diversity data, which of course is publicly available. They can get that. But really as a sort of fact finding, as a place to start, that was the first thing that they came to a resolution about. And they sent a letter to the town manager requesting the same. And I believe also to the school superintendent. The second meeting of the DEI Commission is happening in 15 minutes. So that I can't tell you what's going to happen there yet. Then the Recreation Commission met and they modestly increased rates at the Beatty Center to cover increased personnel costs. I think that's the biggest thing that came from there. The Middle School Building Committee completed the value management process over a couple of meetings since the last time we had liaison reports. And this latest time, no additional savings was found. And then we met last Thursday and set the project amount that we're going to request to be borrowed at town meeting to $102,816,000. So that will be the request amount made in the motion under the warrant article. The Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee discussed sort of baseline principles for the Junction Park work that's being done, and it was a quite lively meeting. The Tax Fairness Committee voted to submit updated warrant articles for this next town meeting, similar to the ones that were voted last year, just given the lack of progress made, in the legislature on their initiative. So those warrant articles are being prepared. They really only just need minor revisions, to dates and such. The text, and they're also opening up the discussion for they're really putting all new initiatives on the table for future study. So, local option income tax, try to work with other communities on what could be involved there to maybe create a constitutional amendment. Lots of other possibilities. Then they're also looking for new members. Virtually all the members on the Tax Fairness Committee have stayed beyond their term. And while they're very committed, they do feel like we need new members. Then the Municipal Light Board met and they discussed their collections, and quite positively, they found that even after all of the pandemic and the moratorium on, shutoffs and all of that stuff, that they actually have a very manageable collections balance. They also discussed electric vehicle rates because, of course, the impact of electric vehicles is quite dramatic if they're charged during peak hours. And so they're trying to set rates that motivate electric vehicle owners to charge on off-peak times. And then they talked about the middle school solar project. And I advised them as well that for the hearing, the public hearing, as well as for the special town meeting, they should be prepared to socialize, what their plans are, because I think many people consider the project as a whole to include the solar installation. And even though it's early days and they don't actually need to finalize those plans for some time, those, reiterating those commitments is key. I then missed the Trails Committee and the ZBA, but I think it was routine business for those committees.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I see that Linda has joined us now. And Linda, what we've been doing, we were waiting for you, and we went on to the liaison reports. And we're going to go back now to item number 3, the discussion of the interim town manager. And then following that, we'll finish up with Henry, Linda, and my liaison reports. So the main item on tonight's agenda is to discuss the interim town manager. And the first thing that I want to do is talk about what our objectives are tonight. And after that, we will talk about internal versus external candidates. And possibly by the end of the discussion, we will have a decision on how to move forward. So for the objectives, I have to say, I've been talking to a lot of people in the community, several people in the SMT. I was at a League of Women Voters meeting today. There is one word that summarizes what everyone is saying, which is the word stability. It seems that there's a real consensus out there that we want to minimize disruption. We want to be very thoughtful and careful. And we have very talented staff in SMT, and we want to minimize disruption and provide stability. So those are some of my initial thoughts on the objectives of what we want to do. Who else would like to talk about objectives before we get into the substance of the conversation?
I think, Terry, the other objective is to make a decision, hopefully tonight, because the void contributes to the instability. And I think we were well on our way with last week's discussion. So hopefully that can continue and we can wrap that up.
Okay. Other ideas?
Well, I think we have to decide what needs to be done now and what we can put off until doing later. I think, and also, I'm not sure whether it's a matter of terminology or not, but looking at the town charter, I see that there's a provision for a temporary town manager if this position becomes vacant, but there is no provision explicitly for somebody called an interim town manager. And I think that actually may be a significant difference, because we have had many occasions, because people go on vacations or et cetera. Somebody has stepped in as a temporary town manager, and that doesn't really have any implications about where we're going in terms of management. It is merely somebody who steps in. We have a very talented group of managers, and I actually came in at the end of the weekly meeting of the senior management team this morning. They're very capable of running their departments, and I'm not sure that their ability to do their job is seriously affected by the presence or absence of a town manager, except for the ability to coordinate and share information, which is something that they do in their weekly senior management meetings. So I don't think that first of all, I don't think we should be in a big hurry about making a decision that may have long-lasting consequences. The last time we did it, we didn't do such a great job. I think we want to figure out why that process did not work and how we make it work this time, and that we spend some time figuring out what it really means when you talk about stability, trust, where we're going, and how we want to take advantage of the opportunity that's been presented to us, because I consider this an opportunity. I consider this an opportunity to have a significant impact on the future of this town and to help it go in the direction that we think it should go in. And so I think we ought to develop a process. How we do that when we have like large meetings like this with many people participating, that makes it very difficult. And I think that the problem with appointing an interim is that what presumption that gives rise to whether or not that person becomes the permanent candidate. And my thought process went in the direction.
Well, Henry, before you get to that, we'll get back to that. We're just talking right now about what our objectives are for tonight, and we're definitely going to get to that point. Let me just clarify what you brought up about temporary, acting, and interim. So I did also look up the charter, and to my surprise, it did not use the terms acting or interim. It used the term temporary. And so what we've done in the past, when Chris left, Kate was the deputy town manager, and she was the acting while Chris was on the payroll during the last few weeks collecting his vacation. Then we took a vote to make Kate an interim. So there was a distinction there, and we have that precedent. Other thoughts from Linda or Matt about how we should approach this as an objectives?
So I think some good points have already been outlined. I guess I do feel that it's important to have some clarity as quickly as we can on an acting or interim position. I do not disagree necessarily with taking our time for, thinking carefully about how we want to proceed for the permanent position.
That's a good way to put it. I agree with that. We want to be very careful and thoughtful and deliberate about the permanent position. Matt, do you have any other thoughts?
I'm basically of the same mind. I think that we have a clear way that we can move forward now. And whatever term you want to use, interim, temporary, it's really, someone to be in the town manager role, acting in that role, to give us clarity. There's many things that can't be substituted by the senior management team by themselves. There are many specific responsibilities of the town manager that need to be fulfilled, and I think we need to know who we're going to for those. And then I also believe that, first of all, we owe it to the citizens of Concord to have a rigorous, a thorough selection process that gets us the best long-term candidate, whether that is a candidate we already have in our midst or another one. So I think that will take some time, and that doubly means that we shouldn't just think of this as a couple of weeks before we launch into that process. That instead it should be that maybe get what I think of as, get the ship stable and headed in a direction, and then let's, start charting that next course.
Okay, great. So the next part of this is, let's talk about, for getting the ship stable, we need someone for January 1st. Do we want an internal person, or do we want an external person? And we talked about this last week, but I guess there was not, well, we need to talk about it again.
Well, I don't know whether you were right asking the right question. I mean, whether it's the internal or external may not make much difference. It's choosing the right person. And one of the things that you have to take into account is whether the person that is chosen to be temporary will be a candidate for the permanent position, because that has a great deal of significance in how the process will run, for many reasons, including the rule of life that the temporary tends to become the permanent. But also, I would hope that whoever is in that position during the period that we were choosing a permanent town manager will be able to assist us in that process. It will be able to act as the executive of the search process. And therefore, it means that it must be somebody who will not be a candidate for the position permanently.
Okay, how do others feel about that?
So I understand, I mentioned some of this myself last week in terms of thinking ahead about the implications for whoever steps forward in the interim. I guess a decision point that Henry has raised is whether or not we feel it is essential for whoever is temporary or acting to necessarily manage the search process going forward, or at least be the executive direction for the search process going forward. So I think for me that is part of the conversation.
I don't think it's necessary personally. In fact, I would prefer to see an independent body that was conducting the search and that was not directly involved in the day-to-day management, that clearly was interviewing those members in the course of that evaluation, or having those members interview the candidate, but that was not running the process.
I tend to agree, obviously, because I've raised that point early. Yeah.
I also agree. I think that the town manager, whether they're temporary or permanent, or, certainly this spring, they'll probably still be temporary. We have a town meeting to prepare for and get through. It's going to be very busy. And to add to that person's duties to be an executive search firm just doesn't make any sense to me. I think I would favor having a screening committee who could really think through very carefully how we proceed, and that would be their only job. They would be citizens in town only, and they could work with the select board and come up with a good process.
That's what we did last time.
But we had a search firm, and I actually don't favor hiring a search firm again. I thought they didn't add value. In fact, they subtracted value. But I think that those details are for later. That right now, tonight, we don't need to solve whether we need a search firm and who's on the screening committee, but we do need to solve what we want to do for January 1st.
I agree with Terry and Matt and Linda, and I think Henry's suggestion about making that person executive to the search committee automatically precludes them from being a candidate, and I don't necessarily agree with that. And I agree that there's plenty to do in the town manager position for an interim or a temporary or an acting, whatever the term is, without being involved in that. And I agree with, I think because we used the same method last time doesn't mean we're going to have an outcome that's not satisfactory, which I'm wondering if that was being suggested. I think the citizen committee can do the job. Whether or not there's a search firm is another question. I agree. We don't need to answer that tonight.
Also, I forgot to mention, one of the most important duties of this temporary or interim town manager is going to be, as Matt put it, to right the ship, to create the ability to, I know there's a lot of angst out there. I mean, probably everyone listening has been through a period where you have a new boss coming in, you don't know who it is, there's a lot of anxiety. We really need to provide the stability so people can get back to work and we can get through town meeting. And that's going to be a huge job, just doing that. Sorry, I have a number of things ringing in my house right now. Anyway, other thoughts on internal versus external candidates? Does anybody favor that we have an external candidate? We do a search for a temporary person? Or do people favor one of our internal candidates?
So I strongly favor an internal candidate, mainly because, first of all, they're familiar with the town's operations as they stand right now, and others are familiar with them. And so that achieves the objective, I think, of the righting the ship, so-called. An external candidate, the process would, I think, be a major distraction and disruption at this crucial stage. So if we're going to go through a process, I think we should make it be for the permanent selection, and that we have adequate candidates now to handle the interim timeframe.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I favor internal at this point.
Okay.
I do too.
Okay. Henry?
I've already expressed my opinion on this, and so I don't need to repeat it, but I don't think it's gaining much traction with the board.
Okay. Fair enough. Are there other thoughts that anyone would like to add? Are there other points that we need to go over? Or are we maybe ready for a motion?
Well, I mean, do we need to be explicit about candidates at this stage, or what is the?
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's the next step.
Right, that's the next
We're
step.
at the-
So, okay, so let's move on to talk about, so it seems like we have a consensus for an internal person who's familiar with the town and the staff. We have two.
I don't know if I'd call it consensus. We have a majority,
Majority, right,
a clear majority. Yeah.
right.
I'm willing to call it a consensus.
Then that by definition is now a consensus.
All right, thank you, Henry. Okay. So we have two excellent internal candidates we talked briefly with last meeting. Do members want to talk about why you might favor one or the other, or are we ready for a motion?
Well, yeah, I think it was quite clear that one candidate stated that she was not seeking the position. The other said that she would be willing to take the position. And so I think that we have a choice, a clear choice ahead of us. So I would move that we appoint Carrie LaFleur as the temporary town manager, effective January 1st, 2022.
Second.
Okay, is there further discussion? All right, seeing none.
With the understanding that that does not preclude her being considered for a permanent role. Is that correct?
That's my sense. I mean, I don't, does that need to be added into the?
Yeah, I just want to be explicit because just for, so everyone absolutely understands what we're
That's
talking
my
about.
understanding. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Second.
so Susan, your second included that. Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, we are ready for a roll call vote.
Sure. Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
I,
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. And we will, I'm sure, be spending a lot of time on the permanent search, the process, the goals, everything about it. And for those of you who are watching this meeting, if you are interested, you might want to submit a volunteer card because we may end up having a screening committee. Okay.
So Terry, I just want to, again, this is understood, but I'm just want to be absolutely clear. So this would be effective January 1, and we are also going to authorize the chair to discuss this decision with Carrie and work out any details that need to be made at this point.
That's a very good point, Linda. Thank you. I have been talking with town council in case we came to a vote, because we were either going to come to a vote tonight or next Monday or at some point. So we need to have an executive session, which we will have next Monday, where we will work with council to draw up some sort of a contract.
Okay. And then in the interim, do we want to be talking about title? So I have seen where, just to be clear, to help clarify or not to the public, but I have seen some towns that have labeled this position as acting interim. And what they're trying to signal by using both terms is that this person is currently acting for a period of time until a permanent position is selected. You may not like that, but I'm just throwing that out there because I've also seen that used a couple times.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
think it would either be acting or interim, not both.
Yeah, so that's what I said. It either will clarify or not, depending on how you look at it.
Acting interim town manager sounds like the interim town manager is not available, so there's an acting one
I agree.
taking their place.
I agree. I think we should talk with town council about this. And I asked last week if members are available at 5 o'clock before our regular meeting, because I think we'll want to have 2 executive sessions, this being one of them. Is everybody still available next Monday at 5 o'clock?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, great. We will now continue with the liaison reports. We have Henry, Linda, and myself. Who would like to go next? Okay, I'll go. Mine's pretty short. Right now, the Transportation Committee is meeting, a Transportation Advisory Committee. This will be their second meeting. I attended the first meeting, and Nick Pappas is chair, and Phil Posner is clerk. We will probably be asked to do some cleanup to the charge. Apparently, the charge that was posted on the website was inadvertently not the final charge that we voted. So I'll be back to you about that. Also, there is a potential scenic road bylaw coming up for annual town meeting. And the Transportation Advisory Committee is very interested in taking a position on that. Another meeting that I attended was this morning, an MAPC meeting about ARPA. And there were a lot of really good ideas from Stowe, Carlisle, Lexington, Sudbury, Hudson. And I'll be getting those slides. One of the things that Sudbury did was they had a public forum. And I'm thinking pretty seriously of having our focused meeting in February be about ARPA, where we can have some sort of a public forum. So we'll be discussing this. They did get $29 million worth of ideas, and they're only taking in 5 or 6 million. So that might be the downside of having a public forum, that you raise expectations too high. But I also learned some really interesting things. Lexington asked if we can buy land for affordable housing developments. And MAPC is going to research it. They think, yes, that ARPA would fund that. So that would be very interesting for Concord. The other thing they think that ARPA will fund is energy and sustainability improvements in schools, even new schools like the middle school. So stay tuned for both of those developments. MAPC is going to research that, though, both of those for us. I also attended the League of Women Voters meeting today. They had a lot of excellent suggestions about the permanent search for the town manager, characteristics of the person we're looking for.
Who is that, Terry?
The League of Women Voters.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think that's enough for my liaison report. I've also been going to a lot of finance committee meetings. And I want to remind everybody, please attend this Thursday night, the public hearing between the selectmen and the finance committee in preparation for special town meeting. So that's Thursday, the 16th at 7 p.m. It will be a hybrid meeting at the town hall and by Zoom. There's only one article on this warrant for the middle school, a very important article. please try to attend. Who would like to go next? Linda or Henry?
Linda.
All right, fine. The Affordable Housing Trust is on a marathon this week with, I think, at least 3, maybe 4 meetings, trying to meet with all the stakeholder groups to hear their reaction to a compiled list of housing priorities that have been identified by Envision Concord, the CPA planning document, as well as the housing production plan. And so we're getting their reactions to that. We're also getting some feedback from what kinds of projects they're anticipating in the near future and what role they would be looking to the trust to manage, either in terms of funding or how to think about that. We have clearly said to the groups that we're meeting with that we're garnering this input now as we think about how we're going to frame our policy statements that will come back to the select board for approval. Because obviously with either limited money or if there should be a future income stream, such as what we've been working with the state on at a higher level, priorities need to be set in terms of the amount of money, the criteria for how that money would be allocated. So we're in a rapid dialogue phase, and just based on today's meeting alone, which was the first of at least 3 this week, it was very rich in discussion. The Concord Historical Commission obviously has been talking about the scenic roads bylaw, and as Terry mentioned, we're going to hear more about that. The CPC has begun their review of recommendations at a rather high level at this point. I think the feedback, this is a lesson to all of us on the select board. We tried to take the low, moderate, and high ranking approach, but in essence, it was more conversational than what we actually gave them in terms of ranking. If we didn't fill in every single blank, like we didn't say all of these are lower priority or some of these are medium priority or whatever. And so that's presented a little bit of confusion in terms of how it gets reported out. So I know that at least 1 or 2 of the committee members, to their credit, have gone back and looked at the recording so that they feel that they can go back to the committee and more accurately describe what they thought the position we were coming from. But they're, this between now and either the end of the year or sometime in early January, they are in earnest trying to do their last vetting of all these projects and allocate funds to each of them, or not, depending on where they come down. I want to remind everybody that the planning board has been dealing with a number of applications. As some of you may know by now, the Mill Terry project on Lowell Road, the major addition to their existing retail space and sort of redesign, was in fact approved at this most recent planning board meeting. So that's a huge project near town center. The planning board will have public forum, very important public forum tomorrow night at 7:00 regarding the new visioning concept for the Crosby Depot area redevelopment and zoning, potential zoning changes. So I encourage as many people to get to that as possible. There's a lot of misinformation that I know is out there, and the website in advertising the public forum went out of their way this time, I think to their credit also, to identify this is not, this rumor you've heard, this is not another rumor you've heard. So the only way that people can get the straight information, I think at this point, is to please come to the forum. Not the only way, but certainly a key way, and they're interested in your feedback. I think that hits the most immediate highlights. Just to remind everybody that for those committees that are expecting to submit a warrant article and participate in the public hearing on January 8th, that deadlines just came out today that the 28th of December, the town manager's office needs to be aware of who is going to be participating at the public hearing on January 8th, and also the name of the presenter, and that by the 30th of December, and these dates are coming up really quickly, which is why I'm mentioning them again, on the 30th of December, the electronic presentation material must be in the town manager's office. That is the deadline. So we've got a really busy end of month going on here.
Thank you, Linda. I have a few comments. Thank you for announcing those dates. And also thank you to the CPC people for doing that extra diligence, going back, listening to the recording. I have a question about the forum tomorrow. I have it on my calendar at 6:30, but you think it's at 7 o'clock? Maybe Chris can look it up and clarify that. If Chris is still with us, I think he is. And while he's doing that, Linda, I wanted to clarify one of my remarks, which has to do with the Municipal Affordable Trust. The MAPC staff said that they thought that buying land for affordable housing was going to be acceptable if it went through the Municipal Affordable Trust. So that's something to maybe put on their radar screen.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Chris, do you know if that meeting on the Thoreau Depot is 6:30 or 7?
It is 6:30 tomorrow night.
6:30. Okay, thank you. Great. Henry, do you want to do your liaison report?
I have nothing further to report.
Okay, short and sweet. All right. Okay, then we are going to move on to committee nominations.
Ray Brutameso for the 2229 Main Street Committee with a term to expire on May 31st, 2024.
Okay. And next we have public comment. I'm looking to see if anyone is raising their virtual hand or their, okay, we have Carlin Reed and then Diane Proctor.
Hi, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. Thank you folks very much for giving us some certainty on the town manager, interim town manager position. And I want to appreciate my thanks to Carrie LaFleur for being willing to step up and do this very difficult job. Thanks. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Diane Proctor.
Hello, this is Diane Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road. I just wanted to say that I'm the chair of the CPC, and we tried to represent very accurately the discussions from the select board. We did not have the grid that we needed in order to proceed with the same authority that we might have if we had had that in hand. That eventually did arrive rather late in the meeting. There remains, and I just want the select board to know this, there remains questions about whether the CPC can in fact buy land for future housing as opposed to support the building of properties on land. And that's being adjudicated right now in a very thorough way by the head of the CPC authority in the state. and we are in careful discussion with Marsha Rasmussen and others, Heather Gill and I and Marsha, and Stuart Signor, who's the state representative and kind of coordinator of CPC. We're in discussion with him about how to proceed. He says it's the single most complicated issue he has seen from a CPC application. So I hope there will be forbearance, understanding that we're doing our very best job. And thank you very much.
Well,
So
thank you
is
for-
there the possibility, though, that a contribution could be made to a fund for that purpose?
My understanding, and there's been no final adjudication, Matt, so I want to speak with the clarity of ambiguity. My understanding is that at the present moment, what his recommendation was after a 2-hour conversation last Friday is that we have the land reappraised, and that the portion of the land that to which the CPC can invest money is in the recreation and open space part, and the other part, therefore, the town and other agencies would have to put money toward. Now, all of this still needs to be, run by Marsha Rasmussen and others. That discussion is still going forward. There is we are not allowed, according to Stuart Signor, who is, as I said, is the executor of the CPC, to just simply put money aside with the hopes that it become affordable housing. Therefore, there's a lot of discussion that still needs to go forward, Matt. And as we sort all of this out, I trust that you will all be patient because it's proving to be a whole lot more complicated than any of us fully imagined. So,
But I mean, you
Thank
could.
Diane. If I could
Okay.
interrupt, Matt,
Sure.
first of all, we have this new information now that possibly the ARPA funds would be able to help purchase the land.
now that would be fantastic if that were possible.
If
But-
it's possible. So, I will forward the person's contact information to you and Marcia. And I'm also wondering if you're working with town council on this.
Town council has also been involved, Terry,
Good.
but
Great.
the problem is town council said it was fine what we were doing.
All
Stuart
right.
runs CPC said not so much.
Okay.
So I mean,
Okay.
we have a division of opinion. We've got a lot to sort out is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I need everybody's patience. No one is being cavalier. No one is being not watching carefully or trying to report accurately. What is going on. Okay, thank you.
Right. And in my opinion, CPC funds are great, but they're still tax money. And if we're getting the money from the federal government, that is even better. So let's see what develops with this anyway. Matt, I cut you off and then we'll go to Mary Hartman.
I
Matt,
think you were probably right to cut me off.
okay. All right, Mary.
Thanks, Terry. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your choice of Carrie LaFleur. I've worked with her for years, and I think she is a calm, centered, knowledgeable person. So I'm glad about that. But I do wonder, as Carrie mentioned last week, that we need to now get a treasurer. We need to backfill the treasurer position. So can you talk to the process you'll use to bring a qualified person here? What's the process? Because we're going to need that pretty quickly.
Right. I have had some private conversations with Carrie on that.
Yep.
That was her first request. She said she would not even consider the job unless we would support her bringing in some sort of temporary treasurer, because no one can do both jobs. You
Right.
can't legally, and you don't have enough time. So if you give us a few more days, a week, you will see a plan coming from Carrie. I don't want to speak for her.
Okay.
Let her continue with the plan, and it will be out very soon.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have more public comments? Okay, I don't see any. So I guess at this time, we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye.
Thank you. We'll see the board at 5 o'clock next Monday and the open session of approximately 6:30. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you.
Aye.